What's up, Guardians? Haterade here, and in today's video, it's getting hot in here as we talk solar and showcase a build that's primed to dish some serious damage and be a blast when Solar 3.0 drops. This Sunbreaker setup is sure to catch the eye of any solar build fan as we focus on insane burst damage and using its ability to feed into survivability. Currently in Season 16, we've seen some Void subclasses get a complete rework thanks to Void 3.0, and it's only a matter of time before Solar receives the same treatment. We'll talk some theory throughout the video, but for starters, let's dive into the build and how it will set the stage for Solar 3.0. Now, I'll preface this build with the idea that it's meant for exploring some strengths of the Sunbreaker, one of its new exotics, and weapons that combine with it in order to start looking at just how we can embrace the revamped subclass when it launches. Today's build relies on three things: the subclass tree itself, the mods and weapons that build it from the ground up, and the exotic Titan helmet, Loreley Splender Helm. Now, I've already covered this helmet and a build for it earlier on in the season when it first launched. However, there was a tweak to the exotic perk that changed up just how useful it can be. When it first released, Loreley Splendor Helm would essentially drop a sunspot at your feet when critically wounded, in addition to allowing you to heal while standing in that sunspot. Now, the exotic perk Cauterizing Flame states that you have to have a charge barricade, which is then consumed in order for you to drop that sunspot. In addition to that, you can now proc an on-demand sunspot whenever you cast your barricade, which will still heal you. A lot of people, myself included, looked at this change as a nerf, but it soon became very apparent that this revamped the exotic's lethality up a notch. In a sense, this allows you to set up a sunspot anywhere without even getting a kill, which is huge and will come into play more later on in the video. Now onto the subclass setup itself. We'll be talking about the bottom tree Code of the Siegebreaker, which boasts some of Sunbreaker's most useful perks. With Soul Invictus, you'll restore your health with ability kills in addition to spawning a sunspot. Standing in these sunspots will do two separate things. One, allows for your grenade and melee abilities to charge faster, and two, they'll heal you thanks to the exotic helmet. Even the super itself will generate sunspots thanks to Endless Siege, which also allows you to throw hammers faster while in super, as well as extending its duration when active. Code of the Siegebreaker is top dog for the current state of Sunbreaker, but how can we expect this to change when Solar 3.0 launches? Well, for starters, you can assume that we'll be getting more grenades to choose from, like the Trip Mine and Swarm grenades from Hunters, and the Firebolt and Solar grenades from the Warlocks, much like we expanded the arsenal of Void grenades with Void 3.0. But what else will change with this setup for the Sunbreaker? What will its identity be once the three trees are gone and a single subclass with aspects, fragments, and two selectable super abilities remain? I would imagine we'll be looking at being able to extend burns created from the melee ability, some slight changes to sunspots, maybe even the ability to heal in them without the use of something like Loreley Splendor Helm. There are so many possibilities that will soon become available to us once we see just how they're broken down in Solar 3.0. What do you think will change or even disappear for the Sunbreaker? Give me your expectations and hopes for these changes below in the comments section. For now, let's dive back into the build for Season 16 with the mods and armor. This build relies on the Loreley Splendor Helm and its healing sunspots when casting your barricade or taking critical damage. But what else can we do to make this both strong and unique? Well, for starters, this build creates a hybrid of elemental well mods and charged with light mods that stack together and support one of the best burst DPS primaries in the game. Given that getting ability kills will both spawn a sunspot and heal us, we'll be using Well of Ordnance and Melee Wellmaker to create solar elemental wells. Picking them up not only gives us ability energy back for whichever has the lowest amount, but will also charge us with light thanks to elemental charge. What are we going to use those charges of light for? I'm glad you asked. We'll be using them in conjunction with high energy fire, giving our weapons a 20% damage buff until we defeat any enemy. But that's not all. You can stack this with Font of Might for an additional 25% damage on your solar weapons. Now, this is just one of the many different ways you can set up a combination of elemental well and charge with light mods, but this was just one that I found to be useful for one of the weapon loadouts I'll be showing you. Final piece of the puzzle in this build is the weapons. I'll showcase two different weapon loadouts that I found pair well with this build and talk a few pros and cons for each. First up is the harder hitting variant of the two, starting off with a kinetic shotgun in the top slot with 1-2 punch. This pairs nicely with the melee wellmaker to ensure that anything you punch will either be close to dying and burn or will be defeated with your charged melee mortar blast. In the energy slot, we've got the raid exotic from the Crown of Sorrow raid, Teraba. This thing hasn't seen a whole lot of use, and I've recently dusted it off, aka pulled it from collections, to give it a whirl. Not only is it a solar SMG, but it also recently got a 40% damage buff to red bar enemies, and when Ravenous Beast procs, you can absolutely melt anything, even champions in most activities. Now, depending on how effective solar weapons are with the release of Solar 3.0, you can see the Teraba establish a huge presence, especially with its potential for usage against champions. Rounding out this first loadout is the linear fusion rifle from the Vow of the Disciple raid, Cataclysmic. The solar linear fusion rifle can roll with perk combos like 4 times a charm and Focus Fury, making it a hard-hitting alternative to things like Reed's Regret and Threaded Needle. This gives you some long-range DPS options in the event you've got a bigger target in front of you that you may not want to get close to. The second loadout I recommend with this build sees Teraba swapped out for a fan favorite of old, Sunshot. Sunshot is the only 150 RPM hand cannon left in the game after the change to hand cannon several seasons ago. With its perk Sunburn, the weapon fires explosive rounds and highlights targets that take damage from Sunshot. Now there's more to this hand cannon than meets the eye, as it can be used as a method of creating both Warmind cells and elemental wells alike. Simply swap any of the mods previously mentioned for something like Explosive Well Maker to make elemental wells when defeating targets with the explosions from Sunshot, or slap on Wrath of Rasputin to create Warmind cells from the area of effect solar splash damage from this weapon's exotic perk. Moving into Solar 3.0, these are just a few of the many weapons that I think will do well in the new sandbox depending on any major changes. However, you've got other options like Tiku's Divination, Dead Messenger, or even the Forgotten Tommy's Matchbook that could all pair very well with a build like this. And that's just the exotics. Any solar weapon with Dragonfly will work well with these mods and type of build, or even the Season 16 seasonal Waveframe Grenade Launcher Explosive Personality, which y'all know I love. There's so many great options for weapon loadouts for a build like this. Try some of these if you have them and see what works best for you. At the end of the day, this is a very fun and effective build right now in Season 16, and could very well be one of the best builds to have on hand when Solar 3.0 drops. Being able to set everything around you ablaze, create wells, recharge your abilities, and push into a fight is a ton of fun. On top of that, you could even swap out exotic armor for something like Path of the Burning Steps, which I covered in a previous video, Phoenix Cradle for a more fire team support solar build, or Precious Scars for constant healing with solar defeats. The possibilities are endless, and in the end, will be more closely dictated by how Solar 3.0 is presented when that moment finally hits. I don't know about y'all, but I'm even more excited for the Solar rework than I was for Void, especially after seeing how it allowed for the creation of so many more versatile builds. As always, I'll have the link to the dim loadout in the description if you want to take a look at everything laid out in front of you. And feel free to check out this build and many more live over on Twitch at twitch.tv/haterade. That's it. I'm done. I'm out. I'll see y'all in the next one.